So in this video, we are going to show you 4 different ways that you can do your own rough-in shower plumbing. Now stay tuned, because it doesn't matter what your skill level is, how comfortable you are with a torch, or how much money you have to invest in your tools. We've got a system that we think is going to work for you. So as long as I've been in the renovation business, I have been running into DIY plumbing. This is really kind of a lot of fun for me. One of the reasons we do this channel is to help people do things not necessarily perfect, but better than they're doing it now. So we're going to show you 4 different ways that you can do your own rough-in plumbing, all right? And we're going to go back old school. We're going to start with copper supply lines. It's a brass valve, all copper extensions, and we're going to show you how to solder it and get a really good fit. The next video we're going to show you is, again, copper supply lines, but we're going to do a little soldering, and we're going to convert that copper to PEX. And then we're going to run that PEX into the shower valve, and that's completely plastic after that. We'll show you the new modern crimpers out there. They're really cost effective, and you'll love doing plumbing with that. All right, so the next video we're going to show is all PEX supply line. This is a newer build, and it's all PEX in the house currently. So we're going to show you how to just tie into that and run a brand new valve system off of that. And then finally, we're going to show you a situation where we converted from copper to PEX. And this system is for people who really don't have a lot of tools in their toolbox, and you can convert with a fitting called a shark bite. But you got to make sure you got access to it to keep an eye on it over the years in case you have a drip. But stay tuned. We're going to show you all these techniques. Let you decide which one's right for you. So today's video is all about soldering in a brand new plumbing valve. And the reason we're soldering is because the original valve is all copper and solder joint. And so we went out and we bought a valve that matches the same kind of installation, so we don't have to do any pipe cutting. Just got to clean all the fittings up and put it back together with a brand new shower valve. This is the way to do it, nice and simple. So the secret, the big secret to doing copper valve installation from an existing valve are this right here. Anyone who doesn't take time to read the instructions on a product nowadays, you're just setting yourself up for failure, guys. Every one of these products that comes out has new design elements, different requirements for how deep it goes in the wall, different techniques for building and removing parts. Every manufacturer is a little different, and every manufacturer is now developing more and more complex, unique scenarios because they're more concerned with the design style than the function, it seems nowadays. So you have to be really careful. Like for instance, this plate gets put on the wall, and then you attach this handle to the cartridge body and you tighten it up real tight, and you create this compression fitting between the handle and the plate and the valve on the other side of the wall. And then the shower functions from here. If you don't get the depth set on this properly, you're not going to have contact with the wall. Or you won't be able to, your hand will be sticking out and it'll look like junk, or you won't get proper contact with the wall. So do your measurements, take great care here, because this is almost a little bit too tricky. It's a little ridiculous. Now, because we've got the water off and it's been draining for quite some time, everything will be nice and dry. So we're going to start off. I checked the tub spout. The connection for the tub spout with this particular kit requires a longer stem on the copper. So I'm going to put in a longer piece of pipe for now. After I'm done on my tile work, I'll measure back and cut it later. So for today, I want to make sure that I get this one removed first, and that's what we're going to start with. So here we go. Just got to add some heat until the solder starts to bubble up. Try not to burn the wood in the wall. I'm just gripping it with my pliers and giving it a bit of a twist. As soon as I see a solder start to melt out of that little spot there, I'll know I'll be good to go. And come on, baby. Here we go, just about, and there we go. Okay. The reason you want to use pliers for this situation is because it gets very hot. Now inside that elbow fitting, it is beautiful. It looks like a solid silver. It's nicely coated. The weld there was done really well. All right, so I've got a piece of copper that's just sitting in my plumbing kit just for such an occasion. Gonna give it a good fresh scratch. Make sure you got some good copper color. and then put on some flux paste on this bad boy. Now, may or may not go in, probably not. Exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat that joint up again. And when that slides in, then we're going to add a little bit of fresh solder. Done. Nice and quick. We'll take our paste and we're just going to wipe that in. Okay, there we go. Make sure it's nice and square to the wall. The whole joint now is all heated up. So we'll just let all that seal up nice and square. Beautiful. Now that that's done, it's time to take apart the old valve, the hot and the cold lines. Okay, so now we're going to take the hot and the cold out. Again, we're just going to heat this up till we see the solder start to drip off, and then I'm just going to hit the elbow out. Hopefully all of this connection will stay intact. Just waiting for the drip. And there it is. Not quite yet. Got to heat the backside. The brass is very thick and it takes a long time to heat up. So when it finally does, there we go, that one's released. Now this side. Okay. Whew. So now we're going to heat up this body and we'll pull the bottom off. It's not attached anymore. So we'll separate this. Okay, now that one's gone. So I've got the water of the house off, but you always have a reservoir handy. All right, now I can hold on to that. Beautiful. So now we're going to take the rest of the valve body off the shower head line, which is still attached to the ceiling there, or up at the top of the wall. So I can actually grab the valve body with my pliers and I can twist it. Or I can just wiggle it. Here we go, see this? Little wiggle up and down. Sliding off. There we go. Okay. It's like being a blacksmith in the 1400s, eh? So now we're going to put this valve body in. We're going to start with the hot and the cold and the shower all at the same time, basically. So what we want to do is we want to just prep all of the ports on this valve body. Nice and simple. Now, when it came together in a certain way, and it usually has markings on it. It'll say hot and cold, H and C. This one just has arrows. That means intake. And on this part, it marked cold. So make sure you get it going the right way. I don't know if it'd make a great big difference. I mean, it looks like a pretty mirror image, but I'm not gonna take any chances. I didn't engineer it, so I don't want to reinvent the wheel. All right, now, that part is done. So the other thing we want to do is we want to get flux inside all of these. You'll see that these fittings are designed for a 1/2 inch copper, or you can put compression fittings on. Whenever it's possible to solder or to crimp versus using compression fittings, I prefer to do it. I've had really bad success with service calls and compression fittings over the years. You just never seem to get that thing on tight enough. It always wants to drip in the wall cavity after everything's all finished. Drives you bloody crazy. All right, now, this is most likely a little warm. All right, we just want to give it a little bit of love with the sand cloth, because we don't want to be fighting too hard putting this valve on. Holding in place stick. All right. The idea is I'm going to heat up this one, and I'm going to stick this up here, solder that on, and then we're going to let it cool for just a minute, and then we're going to put the hot and the cold in. So first we want to heat the old pipe up, the old solder connection. Not too much. You don't want to burn it all. And you want to heat the brass, okay? Not the solder. The brass will get hot. It'll in turn melt the solder on the copper above it, and in turn will heat the copper. And so when this brass is hot enough, and there you go. See, it just kind of sucked it right on. Now we just want to get it squared off with the wall. A little bit of paste. There we go. Now, I'm pretty confident that the solder that was on the existing pipe is now sealed inside my brass ring, okay? I put that on there more like a weld, just in case it's still hot. I want it to be able to hold its weight here now. Now, we're gonna hold this now. Take this off, set that aside for now. Now you'll see that the original hot and cold are not in line with the new valve. Different manufacturer, right? So we have a different issue going on. And that is fine. What we're gonna do is just take my drill and we're gonna disengage. It's warm, but it's not too hot. We'll go with one screw at the top for now. Now we're gonna line this up. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add heat to the brass now, okay? And then pop these two hot and cold lines in. And when all the silver disappears, then we know we're ready to go. What I do wanna do, make sure that the copper around the outside of that weld is nice and clean. So I can just force the issue with some new solder joint to the brass in the event that the other pipe wasn't in as far as this may go this time. All right, so let's add some heat and we'll suck that all together. There we go. And then this side. Okay. Lovely. Okay. Now, I'm going to put a little flux paste on here, and then we're going to add a little bit of fresh soldering. We want to be patient here because we want to make sure that the copper is heated up as well as the brass. So we're waiting for the solder on the existing copper pipe to start to sweat and melt up, and then we'll add a fresh bead. Remember, keep the heat on the brass cartridge so that, because it's thicker, it takes longer to heat up. And you'll know it'll be hot enough to receive this weld as soon as the copper starts to sweat here. There we go. Okay, same on the other side. And this is just to make sure that there's enough solder material inside that joint to seal it up after we've removed and sanded it from the last joint. There, that's step 2. Okay, so now we have the roughen 3/4 of the way. We want to set up our center line before we start attaching things to the wall. So we're going to come down here and measure the screw head on our overflows, 14 5/8. We're going to see they were off center. Okay, so the original instruction was off center. That is awesome. And not just a little bit, it was off a full 1/2 inch. Now that's not a lot if you're using subway tile, but if your grout line is anywhere near the center line of these fixtures, one glance you can say, oh, that's not a square. That's just ridiculous. Brilliant. We're going to do this with our pliers. Okay. Again, we're going to heat up the valve body and slide this up. There we are. Now we want to square this off. I'm just going by eye. You only have a few seconds here until the solder starts to really set it, so. Oh, perfect. Okay, so now we want to take a little bit of flux around this joint as well. And just throw a little fresh solder up there and make everybody happy. I'm going to hold this up with my knee so it doesn't slide out of the hole. See how it wants to fall down here? Hold it in place, and then you can use the solder. And that'll... No, now it's crooked. Well, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And that was just to square it off. I lost my alignment. Okay, so check our measurement here as well. 14 5/8. Perfect. Now the wood that I have installed for this valve is too short. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prop this up this way. A couple pieces of scrap from the truck. And then I'm going to put that to there. And that'll be set the perfect depth behind the shower. Okay, so now that our valve body is all cooled down, we're going to go and install this now. Just looking for my cold marker, which goes on my right side. We'll line this up. There we go. These are all machine threaded. When you're working with machine threads, just put it on reverse. Really easy when you start. And you'll feel it catch. It'll set right in place. That way you can avoid ever having a strip on you and then going back to the store and starting all over again. And when I tighten that valve on to the tile, see how it can be moved around? It'll tighten right in the right spot there for me. I'm just loving this. Time for the blue thing. This is my little 1/2 inch pipe thread with a gasket. When I'm doing my pressure test, just in case, right? You don't want that coming down on your head. It's one thing if the tub fills up with water. It's another thing if the shower starts spewing all over the room. Okay, so let's go get the water turned on, and then we'll see if I know how to solder. Let's pressurize this bad boy. Okay, we're good?
Yeah, we're all good.
Nice. Be right up. Okay, we're all done. We did a water test. Everything's pressurized, no leaks. Hoorah. If you like this kind of content, give us a thumbs up. It's a little old school, but old school is still reliable. All right, and if you have any questions about soldering techniques and products and where to buy them and all that kind of stuff, the tools we use, put them in the comment section below. We'll see you again next time. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram. In this video, we're going to show you how to renovate your shower plumbing from copper to PEX. So if you're like most people, you're in a home that's got a bathroom that needs to be renovated and you've got it all ripped apart and you run into this, copper plumbing. Now you may not be the best plumber in the world, but if you can learn how to make one simple solder joint, you can convert from copper to using PEX, and then you can just use a crimper to install all your plumbing through the rest of the shower. This will enable any average homeowner to be able to add jets and rain showers and all kinds of fun features. And you can even run your plumbing around the nooks that you want to build on your walls. But you need a couple of simple tricks, and here they are. First, you're going to need a copper cutting tube. This is a really simple little tool. Pick it up at the hardware store, about 15 bucks. And copper is a really soft metal. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit lower, so when I'm torching, I'm well away from the wood. Copper is a really soft metal. You can actually just tighten that tube on. Look at this. And it starts cutting right through. And every time you make a turn around the pipe, you just turn it up a little bit more. They come in different sizes, so if you're in an unrestricted area, you can get one with a big handle. It makes it a little bit easier. But in this environment, just a quarter turn, and then just keep on running. It'll take about 6 or 7 times around, and then you'll be able to cut right through the pipe. Now, if you're good with a torch, there we go, we just broke through. You could always just heat up this joint and pop both of these at the same time. A lot of people might find that a little tricky. So this just kind of eliminates all of those problems. There we go. And tighten that on and just work it around. You'll notice also that this control area is really low. Back in the day, this used to be standard to have it really low because the tub was used a lot more than the shower. Nowadays, people are using the shower almost exclusively. And the times that this functions, the tub is very rare, and so we're putting them up a lot higher so it's a little more convenient for while you're having shower use. There we go. So now we're completely clear. All we have to do now is identify how they've got this mounted on. Looks like a couple of nails, This is a fancy little stiletto tool. It's like a little mini hammer, but it does so many wonderful little things for those hard to reach places. Now, in this situation, we're not going to try to save any of this plumbing, so you can be as aggressive as you like because we have drained the water. There we go. And then we'll just lift this up to loosen the nails and pry that right off. There we are. Now, important, don't throw this away. You're most likely going to want to save this copper to add for your tub spout. And that is a good piece of copper, so no sense throwing it in the garbage. Okay, so we got our hot and our cold. Traditionally, hot's on the left. If it's not, you're going to be in for a surprise. What I'm going to show you here is how to clean this, how to torch it, and then how to convert to PEX, or just put a brass cap on. And the reason you're going to learn both of these options is if you have options, it might save you a trip to run into the store. Now this is sandcloth, and it's funny because the last time we did a copper to PEX video, I used sandcloth. I called it sandcloth. It says sandcloth on the box, and people were giving me different opinions about why I was calling it sandcloth in the video in the comments section below. And it's because that's what it's called on the box, so that's what I call it. If you have a different trade name for it, that's fine. The goal here is to get it nice and clean. You can't torch on dirt. You have to make sure that your copper is copper in color before you try to torch anything. And you want to do about 1.5 inches. Don't try to just get cheap and clean around the top, because all it takes is one missed spot and you're going to have a leak. So here we are. Here is the fitting that we're going to use to convert from copper to PEX. Now, this is plumbing language. We talk male and female. Things that get receiving and things that go inside, right? It's the way it works. So this is the male version and this is the female version. The female version goes over top of the copper, okay, which is convenient. The male version is the same size as the copper, and so this would be convenient if you were on a joint or using a coupling. Just thought I'd throw that out there for you to see. But what we're using is the female version. And because the part of the plumbing we're doing right now is kind of mid-demo, we're just getting this all capped off so we can pull the tub out. I could also use just a regular plumbing cap, and I can cap my plumbing that way too, okay? But since we're going to be converting to PEX for the long haul, what I'm gonna do to save myself time for tomorrow is I'm just gonna put 6 inches of PEX on there, put on a test cap, which is one of these little plastic caps here, and that'll be good for tonight. And then tomorrow, we can just cut and add the fittings when we're ready to run the plumbing. Now, basically, this comes already cleaned. Comes from the factory. It's brass. It doesn't really tarnish. But what I like to do is scratch it up just a little bit so that I have somewhere for the solder to sit into, okay? So when I'm doing my torching, if you haven't done torching before, what I'm looking to do is I'm going to use this solder. Here we go. You heat up the joint where you want the solder to go to, which is up here, and you add the solder from the bottom, all right? So what you want to do is create a nice, clean, scratched up environment so the solder has somewhere to sit. And you're basically sealing it for the whole width of the joint, all right? So you end up sealing it about 50 times more than is necessary, and that is the goal. To get such a good, clean joint that there's no risk of it ever leaking, and then you can sleep at night. You'll see, when the fitting is hot enough, the solder will melt on the opposite side of the pipe at the lowest part. And now you know when it's going in, there we go, pushed in and it dripped out. I know that whole thing is full of solder now. I'm adding the heat to the top left, I'm adding solder for the bottom right. The heat goes up, so when it gets hot enough to melt solder in the bottom right, I know it's been sucked because I added the flux. And there we go, it's been sucked all the way to the top. And that's it. That soldering job is done. So I just ran to the car and got my PEX cutting tool. So I'm out of breath. It's too cold to be standing around in a t-shirt. Wanted to show you this. Two different fittings you use to cap the end of the line. These are called test caps. They're made of plastic. And this is a brass cap. That's if you were going to have a line and it's going to end and you want to crimp that and not ever think about it again for the rest of your life. Not using that today. We will be using these, and they're wonderful. You just slide them on. Okay, get a couple of rings, slide those on and crimp it. And that's it. So we're going to just stick this on the line and then crimp it all up, okay? Now, we torched that only 2 minutes ago, but I'm not concerned about if it's too hot. This PEX handles a lot of heat. The way you do this is you would put this test cap on and it has a little stub on it, and you bring your ring right up to the end here, and that tells you that you're in the right place. Light on your crimper and done. Okay, so you want your ring about 1/4 inch off the end of the pipe, snug to the brass fitting. Boom. And this might seem a little bit tedious and frustrating, but it is a lot quicker and a lot more flexible than doing soldering. All right, so we are back here now to finish our conversion from copper to PEX and install our shower valve. This is the typical shower tub system. It has hot and cold shutoffs, as well as it has integrated PEX adapters so that you can run PEX directly to this. And the tub line comes with a 3/4 inch PEX adapter, which solves all of the problems we've been experiencing in this industry, going to PEX and having dripping from the shower head when you do PEX to your tub. So, what we need to do here is really simple. It's just a matter of doing any of our copper work first so we can let everything cool down, and then we can just crimp everything together. So these systems come, the tap just threads off like this. Just be careful, this is all machined brass and it is sharp. You may want to wear gloves for this case. This is just the test cap with the ring on it. And there we go, that's our valve. So I'm going to suggest, since I'm going to go with the copper option for the bottom, I'm going to suggest that you take out the stops for the hot and the cold, just pinch them together and slide that out. Okay, and just give her a tug. There we go, it's all one piece. Now the instructions that come with this do not tell you that it's required. However, experience says when you're using a soldering wet tool, if you have anything on that fixture that's made of rubber, you're probably best to get rid of it. There we go. Oh. And that is why we put the drain cover on. There we are. So now there's nothing left here but solid brass. Now as far as the height that you install your valve at, it's completely optional. consulting with this particular client. She has grandchildren that she uses to bathe in this tub, so she needs to be able to access the water while she's bent over at the tub. So it's not as low as traditional for a tub, but it's high enough that you can reach it without having to bend over while you're having a shower. So it's kind of the best of both worlds here. So before we get started, don't forget rule number 1, turn off the water, drain the line. Just because you turn it off doesn't mean you're not going to have a mess. The lines are pressurized, so always drain the line first. So this valve is going to go on our center line, which is about here. If you're in a situation where you have more stud space, PEX is awesome. They have these wonderful little holders, and you can actually bend it around to go to a 90 without using a crimp. Okay? In our situation here, though, we don't have enough room to turn that, so I'm going to have to use an elbow. And since I'm using an elbow on the hot line, there's no sense using this on the cold, because I'm only going to be able to have as much pressure as on the hot side anyway in a shower. So the easiest way to hook up your plumbing is to use a laser level. Get your laser level on the center line, and then just mark all of your lumber where the line is. Okay, all the way up to the shower head. And that's it. Now there's no more measuring involved. Done. Gotta own a laser level if you're renovating at home. Next thing is to rough in, just to measure all your components. We're going to temporarily screw this to the wall. Good to know in this system, there's 2 holes for screwing it and 2 holes for attaching the plate. The ones that you screw to the wall with this manufacturer don't have any threading in them, so they're easy to identify. I know some companies thread all the holes regardless, and it always drives you crazy. So we will put that there. And now for this, you're going to need a 1/2 inch coupling for the tub. I like to use one of these bad boys because I can attach it to the wall. It's a 90-degree elbow that comes with a mount on it. Now, the way you measure is you measure the gap and then add 1 inch. So you get a 1/2 inch for each fitting. So we're going to go 7, so I need to cut an 8-inch piece of pipe. And measure my 8-inch with my thumb. Of course, this is a rough to met. If you're at all concerned, you can just take off a little bit for good luck. That's fine here. Okay, leave that there for now. And you also want to cut at the same time about a 5-inch extension for the tub spout. Now the particular tub spout fixture that we have is a slip-on tub spout where the attachment happens near the wall. You really only need about 2 inches out of the wall. I just like to go a little overboard so that I'm guaranteed I'm not going to have any soldering on the pipe where I'm trying to slide it over the tub fixture later. Okay. Because we're dealing with copper and we're dealing with our hands, we're going to have oil on the line. We just make sure we clean up the copper, all the ends. Give them a good scratch with the sand cloth. Of course, use the fitting brush inside all of the fittings. Give them all a good scratch. Including here. And you want to scratch up the valve as well. Before we continue, we just want to get all of our torch products sitting here handy, ready to roll. One of the best ways to do your soldering is to have your fixture mounted somewhere so that you don't have to be holding on to something that's going to get red hot. I like to wear my safety glasses when I'm torching because when I get my fixture soldered, I like to use the brush with the flux and just give it a quick wipe. It guarantees a good seal, and you may get something flashing in your face. So that takes care of that. Now, before we solder, we want to assemble. All right, so we want to get flux inside all of our fixtures. All right, so I put this together temporarily for now. I've got a screw in this elbow so that while I'm heating things up the flux goes kind of very liquid. A lot of times these fittings will fall off, and I don't want all the stuff falling in behind the tub. So this will just anchor it all and keep it all in place until I'm done. I've thrown a screw here to get my water line bent out of the way to keep it away from the heat. So now we're ready to do this. I know it looks a little archaic, but the fact is, we're not welding, we're soldering. So, you know, in a perfect world, it's nice to have a nice little pretty joint. But my goal is to get the solder not at the joint, it's to get it inside at the fitting where we scratched it up. Now I got a scratched fitting and a scratched pipe and solder stuck in all those little grooves. That's what the flux does. It's like a magnet, and it pulls all the solder into the inside of the joint where the heat is. So you heat where you want the solder to go, and then when it's hot enough to melt it, it sucks it in. So although maybe a couple of points here, you might see what you think is a pinhole, I'll guarantee you that is watertight. And before we close up the wall, we will guarantee that it's watertight and do a pressure test, so we're going to be okay. Real quick note, don't worry if you get any of this solder on your acrylic. They do not bond together, and it will just wipe right off. Okay? Now, because we have turned off the water, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And drained the lines,
Oh, I'm pretty sure.
I'm confident because I'm looking over at the bathroom tap and it's open and nothing's coming out.
Yeah.
Oh! All right, yay! All right, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna measure where we wanna be here with the water line with our thumb, just a little bit below. This again is eyeballing, and it might be easier if the blade is facing you. Sit it in the cradle, and this is you wanna cut while you turn. That's how you cut it straight without collapsing the pipe. If you just cut it straight on, you're gonna crush the pipe out of shape like that. And then putting on the fittings is a real pain in the butt. So always add a ring as you go, okay? And it's not gonna stay where you want it to, but that's okay. We also need to add enough to go from here to here. I love the fact that this PEX is covered in numbers because it makes it really easy to measure. Okay. Again, we can put the rings on ahead of time. We're gonna have two joints. All right, now, here's one of these situations. Everything is so tight together that we can't connect it. Now, we can take that off and put it all in place. And then we'll throw another set screw on again, just to keep it all in, still while we're working. All right, same with the other side. Twist and cut. The end is no good to us. Ring, fitting, two rings. Connect that, eyeball it, cut it. All right. There we go. Then we have to take our trusty crimpers. Now these are awesome. I think the last time we did one of these copper to PEX videos, we used a different locking system. Since then, Crimprite has come out with a crimping tool that is around $40 instead of $400. So it's finally making something that a homeowner can use. So you can use these solid rings to crimp now as a homeowner without a huge investment in your plumbing. Again, this means that you can do your own plumbing, and the tools will be a lot cheaper than hiring a plumber. Now the goal here is to get the ring about 1/4 inch away from the fitting. All these fittings have these little barbed rings on it. So as long as you're making solid contact on one of these rings, you're going to be fine. But if you aim for the 1/4 inch rule, you're sure to be good as gold. You know, the scary thing is, plumbers today are using exactly the same system. That seems like an awful lot of money to play with Lego. Pay for a plumber. Now don't get me wrong, I love my plumber. And there's a time and a place to call in a professional. But when they make plumbing systems this simple, man, oh man, you better learn how to do this yourself or you're just throwing away your money. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our valves and we're going to put them back in the closed position, which is straight up and down. And we will put back our clips. And this is a pretty simple system to install. A little bit of a push that down, and then close them into the cradle. You probably see it easier on this side, eh? I just got to push it in, right? Drop this in there. Okay, we are good as go. The last thing to do here, of course, is we have to put in the shower system. Just thread this on. Again, go backwards until you feel it sit right. Nice and gentle in case you're cross-threaded. There we go. I know I mentioned this when I was taking this apart. When I'm putting it back on, you've got to use a pair of gloves here. You're supposed to do this hand tight. You can use a wrench just for a 1/4 turn, but hand tight is plenty, but wear gloves. All of these machine lines here, if your hand slips at all, it'll just slice you to shreds all around the inside of your palm. And I learned that one the hard way. All right. So now we're at a point where we've got our hot and cold water supplies all crimped on. The shut-off valves are back in. Our cartridge is back together. Our tub supply is all installed and capped. Now it's time to do the shower. And this is just a PEX to PEX. This is a drop ear connection. Again, put it on your line and tighten it down to the board. So I'm just going to eyeball it to the perfect cut. Add a little bit. That'll never hurt. Wonderful thing about PEX is you can always cut it a little bit long because you can bend it in place. And then just drop it down. Get your crimping tool. Set that to a 1/4 inch. Well, we now have plumbing. Now let's go turn the water supply on and double check everything, please. All right, so my son's downstairs turning on the water supply. What we do is we get on the phone together so that I can communicate with him if we have any leaks. And the first thing we're going to do is with the taps closed, we're going to check our solder joint here and our connections leading up to the valve. And we have no initial issues. Can you go full pressure, please? All right. And we're all pressurized? Okay, come on upstairs, buddy. Okay, so now here's a great little invention that I get at my plumbing supply store. I haven't seen these in the hardware store before, so if you're looking for one, you might want to go to a specialty supplier. But this is just a simple little cap. It has a gasket on it, an extended pipe so that it's easy to cut wallboard and identify things when you're doing your tile work. But it just threads into your shower head spout. Okay, it's exactly the same diameter as the fixture itself. And you just tighten that on nice and tight. Now you can test the pressure in the whole line because I'm capped up here with this and I'm capped down here with the solder. So now we're going to open up the cold water supply. Perfect. We're all finished our plumbing rough-in system now. The final trim goes on after the tile, and that's also where the cartridge gets installed in here. The reason they have the shutoff valves on this bracket is so that you're not mixing hot water through the cold water line. I know that there are some systems out there that come with a test cap that don't have the locks, and I've had situations like that where you install your shower, and before you know it, a couple days later, the toilet's running hot water while you're busy tiling and such. So These are designed to keep the water from flowing until you get the rest of the system put together. And that's about all you need to know. So if you want to see how this is all finished up, I'm sure we'll have some of the finishing trims in the project video later on. But thanks for watching. Thumbs up if you like it. And comment down below if you've got questions about this system or other systems. We're always here to help. We answer your questions every day, and we'll see you then. So today we're going to be installing the new Renovision Pro line shower valve. On this bad boy here, it's a new product on the market, the new Pro series. This is a mixing valve, hot, cold, and then one outlet, and then the second outlet. Now, oddly enough, this one comes with its a 3/4 inch line for crimping, or it's a 1/2 inch piece of male copper here, so that you could just put copper line right over top and extend down to a tub, or you can add that little stopper there with solder. The other option you might want to try is a shark bite, but on further inspection we found that when you compress that on there as hard as it can go, it doesn't allow for the interior of that valve to actually work, and that pops off without any. Don't use the shark bite on this valve. There's just not quite enough room. Note to Renovision Pro, if you want to make a modification so that this valve stem is a little bit longer, then we could use our shark bite. In this situation, the back of this wall is a storage room. We'd have access to it. That'd be a perfectly legitimate installation. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to open up this valve. And this is just a temporary thing here. We're going to take that out because it's got a rubber gasket on it, and we don't want to overheat it. So we're going to actually solder on our 1/2 inch copper cap. Okay, and so this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do that first before we get into any of the construction, because we want to give this time to cool off again before we handle it. Now, at the hardware store, you can buy a little soldering kit for dummies. It's pretty new stuff. Comes with solder, comes with flux. Okay, so we're going to just light up our torch. Really simple. You'll hear the gas out of flame. All right, so here we go. So what I do is I just set my torch on the ground. We're on concrete. If you're over top of any other kind of flooring, put some protection down. When the solder drips out, it's actually quite hot and it can burn your flooring. So we're going to scratch out the inside of our cap just to create some grooves there where my solder can sit in. And get some flux paste. We're going to just wipe that up. And that acid basically sets up that copper, so it's nice and clean. So we're going to just heat where we want the solder to go. So we don't want to heat that part, we want to heat over here, because that's where we want the solder to go. So we'll put that in the flame. Now, this gas in this system, it's a little slower than a MPS gas or a plumber's torch and acetylene torch. We want to heat the copper to the point where we heat the copper and the brass. When the brass is hot enough over here that the solder melts, oh, there it goes. Starting to suck it up. And now I'm just going to push my solder rod right in the side. And when there's enough left over that it falls out. Now we're done. We'll just give it a bit of a wipe. There we go. So when I'm doing a job like this, I like to think ahead of myself, and I set up, I know my water line's coming down. My center line is going to be here. It's really tight to bring a water line down and join it over. So I'm going to drill a hole, bring the water from this side. So I'll just lay out my fittings, make sure I got everything I need before I get started. You have to pay attention here because you need something to mount this diverter on. This valve body needs something. Now, so the middle of this plastic line, which is basically, it tells you anywhere here, okay, that's where your wall needs to finish. So I'm going to set this back 3 inches, 2.5 inches plus my wall board, and I'll be at 3 inches finished, plus tile. I'll be great. The way you set this is you pretend you're standing in your shower, and you just go grab it. Boom, this high, okay? And we're going to go back 2.5 inches with my lumber. at 38. So we're just setting up our 2x4 in the wall. Now you want it to be nice and sturdy so it's not going to twist. You don't want to have your valve body moving around inside the wall. Mark our center line for our valve body, right there. Okay, so that's the center line for my valve body. All right. So we're going to hold this up on that center line. That's where we're going to mount it. There's my mounting screws right there and there. And this is where I need my hole for my water supply. Okay. I would use this bit here, it's 3/4, it's plenty big enough. But because it's so close and so tight, I'm gonna give myself a little extra wiggle room. Using this self-feeding auger bit. So really simple, guys. We're gonna put our copper ring on the pipe. And it's nice, we got this color-coded PEX line here. We're gonna go 1/4 inch up. And this is this wonderful little tool. Now, you pull these back and it opens it right up. Okay, and then it's a crimper as well. So once we got the crimper on position, we'll turn the fitting and then squeeze. Now there's a position of this handle that like really stiff, and then once you get past the point of where it needs to be, it just collapses on you. So again, we can take that off. Has this wonderful little plate here. And it says go or no go. It has the different dimensions, 3/8, 3/4. We're using 1/2 inch. So we're gonna just see if that fits. Perfect, you see? Neat, eh? That's how you measure. It's a little gauge to measure that your crimp is the right size. Awesome. Give ourselves that 1/4 inch. Okay, and crimp. Quick double check, and good to go. Okay, so now we got that one set up. Here we go. So now we have lots of line to play with. And we're gonna cut it on the short side first. Get that ring installed. And then we'll make this one a little bit shorter. Here we go. Put in our ring. Personally, I find it easier to connect my plumbing before I mount it. Again, come by, check your fitting with your gauges, make sure it goes on nice. Okay, I'm going to install this supply line. For all these guys on YouTube who are upset about the O-rings that I used before, this system, I mean, yeah, great. It seems like it works great, has a nice compression, but this is a two-hand operation. And these rings slide up and down off the PEX way too easily, so you almost need a third hand to operate this thing. So this isn't just a simple shower valve. So it's not a valve with a shower head. What we're putting on here is an adjustable slide bar. So we're gonna have our hose attached to the shower head, which releases off the slide bar, comes down under and over, attaches to this drop ear here. So now we gotta get our water supply from here through the other side of the wood and then down to this location. I usually like to have it, you know, somewhere close so that it hangs nice. Not a real big issue, so we got to drill another hole. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, using this testing gauge might seem a little monotonous, but this is a great way to find out if you missed locking one of your joints. So I got a few flooring screws here. I'm going to use that to mount my drop here. They're a lot stronger than drywall screws. And yet, they don't stick out the other side and cause any friction with my line. When you're buying a system like a Rebuild Pro, a lot of times you'll get the rough-in or the valve body and then a trim kit separate. If you buy from the building stores, you'll get it all in the same box. The rough-in valve comes with this temporary plug, very similar to a Delta system. And if you don't have the finish kit when you install this and you put it together, this is a great temporary fix, right? You screw that on, now you're watertight, you can turn the pressure on. But now they're sharing that area with the hot and the cold water line, and the hot water will win. So that heat will travel back up the cold water line and presumably over to the toilet and put hot water in your toilet. Then the toilet starts to sweat, something fierce, and then your client calls you up and says, how come my toilet is making water all over the floor? Get the trim kit at the same time and install the finish valve right away. When you're done your entire job, you might want to open it up again and flush it just to make sure there's no debris in the line so it's operating properly. What we're going to do is just check the paperwork real quick. All right, that was warranty. Finish valve, yes, it calls for a 2 installation, okay. One just slides over the other, blah, 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 blah. Good. All right, now I'm not guessing. It's pretty straightforward actually, but I just don't want to guess. Okay, so that lines up like that, and this lines up like that. These two holes there. Okay, this says you do finger tight and then a quarter turn with a wrench. Meet the wrench. Now all that's left to do is to pressurize the lines, make sure it's not dripping, and we can complete our wall installation and our tiling, and then we'll come back and put the trims on at the end of the day. What we're using to convert from copper to PEX is a shark bite connector. And this is what I was mentioning, it's like a Chinese finger puzzle. So the more pressure is on, instilled in this connection, the stronger it holds. Now we can generally just stick it right on the copper and shove it down and create the connection. But before you do, you want to take some sandcloth and clean your fitting, just to make sure that you don't have any burrs. Because, or any solder bumps like this. If you don't have a nice smooth connection, it will leak. You just set it on there, and then you just give it a push. Now that's locked in place. And set it on, nice little twist, and a push, locked in place. Now we're going to take our PEX. We just want to rough measure up to where our pipe's going to go. We set that in there and push. A bit of a twist, push. Now, Most fittings are locked in place, they're not ever going to come off. This is the claim, so today we're going to find out if it's true. Basically what we have here is there's water intake that are designed for PEX. That reduces the amount of work that we have to do. And then there's two outs. One is for the tub and one goes to the shower head. It'll work with a physical diverter on the outside on the shower tub. Typical thing, you pull the trigger, stops the water, backs up, comes out the shower head. So this is kind of system we're going to use. So what we do is we use this wonderful plumber's paste and we put it on the threads. So in order to prep for our valve, we need Teflon tape. We're going to do a few runs on the threads. So basically when it comes to plumbing, there's outside diameter and inside diameter of the pipes. And what we're dealing with is all 1/2 inch outside diameter. And the reason that's important is because when you go shopping, there'll be different sizes, 1/2 inch, 3/4. And so when you're dealing with most water supply, the copper pipes in the house are 1/2 inch. If it's all modern, it's still 1/2 inch, but it'll be in plastic piping. If you go to 3/4 supply, traditionally that is a much larger volume of water. Sometimes people use that on the hot water going to their tub if they have a large volume they want to fill. But traditionally, 1/2 inch is all you get. So we're going to put this on here. We'll just hand tighten these and then we'll get the wrench out and then we'll finish that off. Now traditionally, it's not really necessary to use Teflon and plumber's paste. A lot of guys will just use, just the Teflon or just the paste. But since it doesn't hurt, I use both. Unfortunately, there's a lot of products manufactured overseas nowadays. And you find, in my experience doing warranty work, that a lot of times there's not really a problem with anything except for the fact that it's just not manufactured up to snuff. And nowadays, manufacturers don't seem to worry about quality control coming off the assembly line. They just replace something when it doesn't work. So with that in mind, a little overkill on making sure your compression fittings are nice and secure is probably a good idea, because the net effect of something not working is a flood, destroying your ceiling, possibly your flooring, and all they're going to do is giving you a brand new free 79-cent fixture. Who cares about the 79 cents? Traditionally on the back it'll have markings, it'll have cold, hot, up and down, and that tells you which way to install it. Pretty simple. So we mark the center line on the wall, you place your fixture against your 2x4 and use a couple of short screws, mount it. Now this product here is the Sherlock rings, blah, 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 blah. They're 1/2 inch rings, which is 1/2 inch diameter, the outside of the pipe, which is the same as the copper has the plastic. These rings, as we take them, we just slide it over the pipe and we place them on our fixture. And we put this ring within 1/4 inch of the end. That way we're clamping down on one of the rings on the brass, okay? We want to have pressure in between these rings, and that's where you get your fit. So we just simply push this on, crimp them together. This takes a little bit of force. Make sure you close the tool entirely. And then from there, all we do is we cut back our water supply where we want it. Put on the other rings, slide them over the top. Take our elbow. As you can see, the advantages to all of this are really quite obvious. It's rather quick. And when I'm done crimping this together, we're finished with the water supply. We can test it right away. So the tools that we're using here don't require a whole lot of skill. Just a couple of simple crimps. The average homeowner can do this without any difficulty. A cutting tool for the pipe, a decent ability to measure, and you've got modern plumbing. The downside is you have to rely on your ability to crimp this to the exact depth that it holds the water pressure back, and not too close and not too far away that you get a proper seal. And by the looks of it, there is room for manufacturer defect that if the crimp ring doesn't grab properly, it could break loose. So we'll have to wait until we do a water test to find out if it all holds together. 14 7/8. Mark my center. The next step here is to install our tub spout. And it operates just the same concept as the other. We want to just take our pecs, measure the depth of it, take our pecs cutting tool, turn as you cut so you don't crush the pipe. Put your ring on each end first. Oh. Slide one on. Now for the shower head extension, we're going to put the ring on. We're going to attach what we call a drop ear. I don't know the story behind why it's called a drop ear. I'm sure it's fascinating. It is definitely it's basically just a threaded brass fixture with built-in mounting ports here to put the screws in. Set up the height that we want. Measure here with our eyes. Cut the tube, put on the ring, stick it on there, adjust for our 1/4 inch gap here, crimp, 14 7/8, center line. Simple. So as you can see, we have a brand new shower valve with a tub spout and a shower head spout. All plastic pipes, crimp rings, brass fittings, shark bite connection. And this has enabled us to convert from an old system to a brand new system without the use of any torch or soldering or any special skills. No need to hire a licensed plumber. And we're good to go. The advantage of this system is that it's safe, it holds the water back, and anybody can do this. So in the end, I give shark bite an A+ for home users. The only downside is the cost. If you're going to use this on a regular basis, you might want to learn how to do traditional plumbing with a torch. But if you're doing a home renovation or a simple upgrade, the $10 a fitting is worth the money, because $10, $20 and I can switch over to plastic plumbing and I don't need to hire a plumber. I did it in about 20 minutes. Fantastic. All right, well, thanks for watching that video. I know it was a lot of information, but hopefully you were able to find something in there that's gonna work for you. And remember, there's not just one right way to do everything. There's what's called industry best practice, but the best way for you to renovate and do your own DIY is where you're comfortable and you're gonna get the result that you can go to sleep with. So make sure that you check out the playlist that we're creating for this, because we're doing a lot of compilation videos now to help take you through the different steps to show you options, okay? Because everybody's a little bit different and we're gonna have different skill level, so we're just gonna help make sure everybody has an option to get the job done right. If you like this kind of content, hit the thumbs up. Love the interaction with you. And if you have questions about plumbing or any other kind of renovation questions, then feel free to put it in the comments below. I'm just gonna answer those every single day. And don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, then subscribe. We have a lot of awesome content coming up. Really looking forward to seeing you in the next video.